What's up guys, JayzTwoCents here, and we're doing a long-awaited video, way overdue, but yeah, we're finally getting around to that. And that is the complete overclocking guide to Pascal. That's your GTX 1060, 1070, 1080, Titan XP, and potentially in the future a GTX 1080 Ti, which everyone seems to swear is right around the corner. But that doesn't really matter today because it's still going to apply to any of the Pascal GPUs, both right now and future. So, with that said, let's go ahead and show you how to pull the most juice out of your GTX 1080, both with FPS and power consumption, and get all the FPS. Hell yeah, man, we want all the FPS. We want to literally crack our screen because we are just sending so many frames to it. And if you don't want that, well, then you've come to the wrong video, man. With its unique freeform modular system, the new Master Case Maker 5 from Cooler Master allows unparalleled flexibility with its adjustable internal layout and exterior customization options. Learn more about how you can start customizing your own case by following the link down in the description. So this video might end up being a little bit longer than the norm, and for that very reason, I want people to be able to come back and reference this video as a source for refreshing your minds later on if you try to change your overclocks. So with that said, I'm going to be putting timestamps down in the description of the various chapters of this video so that you can come back and watch it later, or skip ahead now if you already know some of the basics and you're just curious as to what kind of results we get today for the sake of this demo. So with that out of the way, let's move forward. You're going to need some tools here. Obviously, you're going to need a Pascal GPU. This isn't going to work on AMD, guys, sorry. It's also not going to work on the Maxwell or older GPUs. This is purely Pascal overclocking guide. Some of what you'll see will work on Maxwell, but the GPU Boost 3 stuff we're going to talk about, nope, not at all. So make sure you got a Pascal GPU if you want to get Pascal knowledge, if you want to fill your brain with some Pascal. Yeah. All right. You're also going to need an overclocking utility. The two major ones are MSI Afterburner and EVGA Precision X OC. I am using Precision X. Precision X OC is pretty polished compared to when it first launched, so we'll be using that for the sake of today's video. And then I'm using Heaven Benchmark just for this video, but if I were actually trying to find max overclocks right now, I would be checking out like 11 different programs, because you'll find you might be stable in one and not the other, causing you to have to reduce your clocks until you can find stability in your entire gaming library. So keep that in mind. If you're testing and you get a crash in Heaven, but you don't get a crash in Valley or 3D Mark, that's normal. You just have to dial in that overclock that works in all of your programs. And that's half the fun. And it could take hours, days, weeks, months sometimes to find that max overclock. The first thing you're going to do here is you're going to right click on your desktop, go to NVIDIA Control Panel, and by default, we're going to be changing the power mode, because by default it is set to optimal power, which means give me some good performance, but let's make things nice and efficient. Well, if you're watching this video, you don't care about efficiency, you care about all that FPS bragging rights. So we're going to switch that to prefer maximum performance. You'll hit apply, mine's not there because I already had it there. Now you're ready to go. We've got NVIDIA on the right page here. We want more power. We don't care about all the watts. Screw the watts, we want the powers. So this is Precision X. Say hi, get acquainted. You're going to be spending some time in here for a while, especially when you're finding your max overclocks. Let's go ahead and talk about some things here so you understand, get some basic things set up. On the left here, these are your menu hot links. You've got hardware monitoring, and this is where you can monitor various things happening with your card. These are the things I recommend monitoring, by the way, the very basics. Power percentage, that's your power target. Memory clock, if you're going to be overclocking your memory. GPU usage, we want to make sure we're under load or what our load percentage is. GPU voltage, that's kind of a given. Power limit, this isn't set to either 0 or 1, so this is an on or off monitor. If this ever hits 1, it means your power percentage maxed out and the card ended up throttling itself due to power limit. So we just want to see if we ever hit 1. Chances are you won't, especially if you have an AIB card or something above a Founders Edition, because they give you more power percentage to play around with, so this never hits 1. GPU clock, it's kind of the whole point of this video, and our temperatures. Obviously we want all the FPS, but we don't want to blow up our graphics card, at least not yet, so we want to go ahead and make sure that we keep the temperatures under control. Memory usage, not important for overclocking, only important if you want to know how much memory is being used in your games. It's always fun to play around with that at different resolutions to see how it responds. And then of course, fan speed. That's only going to matter if you have an air-cooled card. If you're doing this with a water-cooled Pascal card, this is not really going to matter a whole lot, especially if it's a full water block, because then you have no fan. So there's no point in monitoring 0 all the time. Now you can change what's being monitored right here by a couple of things. You can click OSD settings up here in the menu, or you can just right click in the graph and then go to properties, and this will show you everything that you're monitoring. So these are all the possible things you could monitor. A lot of it is fluff you don't really need to look at. And then if you want it to show up in the monitor, you make sure your graphics card is highlighted here. However many graphics cards you have, you can monitor each one individually. Obviously I only have one GTX 1080 classified in here right now. So I've got it showing up in the monitor, which is here, and on-screen display, which is the overlay inside of the games. So you can turn it on for both, or for one, or vice versa, however you want it to be. And you can also change the color of each individual item inside of the color palette right there. So you can have different things be different colors, but it's labeled in OSD, so I just leave it white, not that big of a deal. And then if you look down here, you can toggle OSD on and off by hitting F12, or you can rebind that key to something else. The K here stands for K-Boost, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It's something you can use to find your stable overclock, or at least find out what your max clock attempt is going to be before you start, but I don't recommend using it full time, but we'll talk about that when we're ready. Over here you can obviously see the graphics cards that are currently installed. I have one 1080 classified in there. It doesn't say classified, but trust me, it is. You can tell because this number is going to go pretty high right there. And then for those of you with air-cooled cards like this one, this is going to be a big deal for you right here. This is where you can control your fan. If you click the curve button, it'll bring up another menu. You can play with your fan curve right here. You can make it really sharp. You can make it, quiet. Obviously, if you're overclocking your card, we are sacrificing noise for thermals. So get used to it. It's going to be loud. It needs to be loud. You want to keep it cool. But these fans are meant to run fast. So I don't recommend going to 100% if you can avoid it. But with that said, you are going to be sacrificing thermals or noise for thermals. So just expect it. So looking at the gauge right here, you've got your GPU clock. Obviously, that's the bread and butter of all this. You've got your memory clock. This tends to freak out a lot of beginners because they think that, oh my God, I'm supposed to have 10,000, but it's only showing 5. Remember, guys, it is DDR, which stands for double data rate. So we are going to see this number times 2. So obviously my effective memory speed right now is 10,010 megahertz, not 5,005. So you got to keep that in mind. Whatever number you see here, times it by 2, and that is your effective. Voltage in millivolts, and of course our GPU temp. It's kind of warm in this room right now, so that number is a little bit higher than I'd like it to be, but whatever. So moving forward, there are 2 ways that you can overclock your Pascal graphics card. You can just do it manually here by playing with the sliders, or you can do it using GPU Boost 3. Now GPU Boost is nothing more than a curve that says at various voltage ratings, change my offset or my additional clock speed I want to add to the GPU Boost to a certain number. Okay, now I know someone right there just went, what the heck does that even mean? Well, here is the factory basic curve right here. You can see it is just like it sounds. It is a curve. It is not straight. So what that means is as we get up here in the higher voltages, which by the way, that does cut out at 1093 on Pascal, even though they show you can go all the way to 1162, that's not true. You have to stop at 1093. Nothing above that is going to take any sort of effect. So I wouldn't worry about trying to tune up to 1163. It's not going to happen. But as I said, it is based on a curve. So if I want to start overclocking the max clock, what I can do is I can start clicking a little bit higher, and as you can see, it adds an offset, whatever the value is that I'm clicking. So however high I'm going above that, 200 megahertz, 175, 125, that is going to be applied throughout the entire curve on the basic setting. If I go to linear, wherever I click on the highest setting, it's going to create a linear line, which is not going to be a curve like this. So this is probably going to lead to crashing because you're more than likely not going to be able to add 600 megahertz to your boost clock. That's just not going to happen. Or you can do it manually where you set each individual square, and that takes a lot of time. It's not really all that necessary. So to understand how all of this works, you have to do a base test. So for that, let's go ahead and start up Heaven Benchmark. We've got our OSD on, and let's go ahead and see what the clock speeds are. Let's let it load up here. Let's let it gain a little bit of heat, and then let's see what the numbers are. You're not going to know how effective your overclock is if you don't at least have a base run. All right, so looking over here at the left, these are the things we're monitoring. You can see our power usage here is only sitting in the high 70s, low 80s. Our GPU clock is 2012. Our memory clock is 5006, or in this case, 10,012. Our GPU temperature is at 52. I do have a higher fan curve on there, so that's why it's not going to go too much higher than about 60. Our memory usage is only a little over a gig. Our GPU voltage is at 1.063. and my fan speed is at 76. And as I mentioned earlier, if this power limit ever hits 1, it means we hit 100% of our power limit, telling us that we had to throttle based on power. So what you're going to do now is you're just going to kind of observe. You're going to see what's happening here. You see our voltage has already dropped down to 1.044 from 1.063. Why is that? Well, the temperature's climbing. As this number goes up, this number right here is going to go down, as well as the voltage. Because remember, the voltage is tied to the clock. So as the clock comes down due to temperature, the voltage will come down with it. That's how it controls its temperature. Now 56, 57, 58C is not a lot, but remember that control, it's dynamic. It is going to slowly adjust itself as temperatures and power changes. It's not going to just be like a hard sudden drop, which would also give you a hard sudden drop in frames per second, giving you a bad experience. So what I would honestly recommend is let this thing loop for about 20 minutes to find what your max numbers are with the base run, and then start adjusting from there. But I'm not going to wait 20 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and quit out of here. So if you want to see how the curve affects things, so then I would go over here to the 1093 square, which is actually the fourth one over. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I would just add, like, let's just go with 100 megahertz. Apply. So now we've just applied that curve. So as you saw, if we look over here at our monitor, our GPU clock went up to 2012 or 2025, as you can see in our max, but then we settled at 1987. We can also give ourselves a little bit more fan speed here. Remember, you're going to be sacrificing noise for temperatures. So now that we've already got our plus 100, let's go ahead and start it up again and just observe. And this is what overclocking with GPU boost or even your manual settings is going to be. A lot of change this, test, change this, test. And if you crash, more than likely it'll either just say the driver crashed, or it will hard lock your system. You just restart, rechange your settings, and start again. But if you look at the core clock, we already hit 2101 megahertz at 1.050 volts by doing nothing more than clicking that one little square. Some people would be more than happy with this, and you're done. But that's not me. That's just not how I work. I mean, you guys should know that by now, right? So anyway, you let this loop and loop and loop, let the temperatures equalize, see where it settles out, and there you go. Now obviously that's not good enough for me. I like to push things. Over here on the left-hand side right here, you also have a voltage adjuster where you can tell it add more voltage. Now this right here, I used to think, I'm like, what is this voltage percent? What does 100% mean? Well, what that means is, as you guys saw on that last test, we only hit what, 1.044 to 1.050 volts, and the test before that, 1.063. Remember I told you 1.093 was the max? We didn't see that yet, did we? What this little chart is saying right here is allow the voltage to go percentage of max, being from where it's going to boost to how much farther it can go. And in this case, it's only about 30 millivolts. So that putting it to 100, even though it's red and it warns you, like, try not to blow up your GPU, this is saying allow it to go to 100% of the available voltage. Well, since we have a curve here that tells us allow the GPU to go higher based on a curve, if I up the voltage, what's going to happen? Well, let's apply it. Let's ramp up our fans even higher, just in case. And let's start it again. Let's see if we get more core clock. If you remember in the last run, we had a 2101 megahertz clock. Is it going to go higher? I don't know. I only did a plus 100 offset. But look at that. It went to 2114. And you can see it's at 1.063 volts. See that right here? We're looking at OSD. So our fan speed's at 90. Our temperatures are well in check. As you guys can see, there's your classified cooler with the fan turned up. It is pretty damn good. But you can see we just gained 13 megahertz, or one core step. Remember, it steps in 13s. It's really kind of strange. But anyway, we just gained one step by doing two things. We clicked a square on the curve, and we simply said, let the voltage go farther. So as you can see, our voltage is now going to 1.075, 1.081, and over time you will see that 1.093. And our core clock, as you can see right here, is staying exactly where we want it. We don't want it bouncing around and stuff. And so far, that's not what's happening. Now, the longer we let the test go, it might drop down a step or two as the temperatures reach the 60s. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and go to a manual setting. None of this matters to me. I don't game in this range. I game up here. So I'm just going to let this stay factory, and I'm only going to adjust the high end. And I'm going to go plus 150. Let's see what happens with plus 150. If plus 100 got us 2114, what's plus 150 going to do? So I just went all the way across the max range at plus 150. I guess we'll do a couple steps. We'll do a couple steps down too, like that. So now it's just 150 across the top. And the only reason I did manual is, like I said, I didn't want it to apply that plus offset to the lower voltages and frequencies because it's not that important. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to try a plus 175 in my manual range because or in the manual curve, because I don't want the lower frequencies to change. I'm okay with the lower frequencies just staying with the stock boost. But I did a plus 175 offset on the 1043 and higher frequency. So we've got to hit apply, otherwise it won't save. And if you're curious as to what K-boost does, this button right here will force the GPU to go to its max clock even at idle. So with that said, let's go ahead and see what plus 175 is going to get us here on the GPU. So what's interesting here is you can see that that's really just kind of chilling out at 2114 now, no matter what I do. And the voltage is still not going that much farther. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of GPU boost. So even though I'm adding offset there, as you can see, I added an offset of plus 175, it still stayed the same when I did plus 100 earlier. So that should be 75 megahertz faster at the very least. So let's do this then. Let's go back to default. Let's go over here to the manual tab. Let's put this back up because we need to keep our fan nice and fast, especially on hot days. I'm going to change the power target up to 130. And I'm going to set the priority to temperature. I'm saying don't even start to throttle this GPU until it hits 91C, which it's never going to hit. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do the same plus 175 offset, and I'm going to hit apply. Well, now I'm kind of curious as to what that offset's going to put me at. Is it going to immediately crash? Is it going to be way too high? Well, if I hit K-boost, that's going to force the card into max clock speed at the desktop, or at idle. It's just going to go. And as you can see, that's a 2189 megahertz overclock, which I already know is not going to work with this card. So why don't I try 150 and hit apply? Well, you can see it drop down to 2164. So that's what I would use K-boost for. You can use that when doing benchmarks to find your max overclock, but I wouldn't leave it there all the time because you're always going to be running your core clock and your voltage as high as it would go. So I would turn that off. Now that I get out of GPU boost, which you guys just saw, no matter what I did to that curve, even in manual, it wouldn't allow me to go any farther than 2114, which was really disappointing. So now I've taken manual control, which is the other part that I already showed you on how you can actually overclock your graphics card. So we saved our settings, we got our fan ramped up, and let's go ahead and see what happens. So as you can see now in heaven, we're running at 2164 megahertz. We're only 85% into the power limit. So I could have still left it at 100. It's not drawing more power by raising the power limit. It's just raising the limit. But as you can see, we still haven't even pulled 100% of that 230 watt TDP. So right now, if I'm at 80% of 230, I'm curious, how much is this card drawing? It's probably realistically drawing somewhere around 184 watts, which is really not, it's only 4 watts higher than what the Founders TDP is. But you can see though, we did just step down 1 to 2152, and this is kind of normal. This is the stuff you're going to see and that you're going to experience when you're doing your overclocking. Now, why did it do that? Well, look, we're at 1.063 volts. We're not at 1.093 like we should be. So what I want to go and check right here is, did I raise my voltage? Nope. See, the voltage is still sitting here at 0. So here we are now at 100%. Hit apply, hit run. And what we should theoretically see here now is a 1.093 volt. It will eventually get there after like maybe 30 seconds. And it stays at 2164. So here we are, 2164, and our voltage is at 1.063. And now we're stepped up to 1.01 or 0.81. And then you're going to see the 0.93. It might show 9.4 on this app. But what you're going to notice here is that this core speed is going to stay. It's not going to fluctuate. So there it is. You can see now we're at 1.094 volts. We're pretty much pushing the card as hard as it can go. Temperatures just hit 60, 61. It'll probably balance out around 63 with the fans at 90% with this level of overclock. Now I can push it slightly farther if I want, but I know that this card isn't stable above that because I've done lots of testing with this card already. I already know for a fact that my card is going to artifact. Now artifacts are basically errors in the GPU rendering. It could be green triangles or black lines or white flashes, rainbow colors, anything. If you see any of that, even just a little bit, then you need to back it off just until that goes away. But that is basically how you overclock the Pascal GPU. The memory overclocking is exactly the same as it always was. You can add an offset. And I happen to know for a fact that most of the 1080 and 1070 cards can handle a plus 500 on the memory, which is actually a pretty big deal. But guys, that's it. That's what you have to tweak. That's what you have to play around with. Don't get too stingy with your fan curve. You're going to be sacrificing acoustics for thermals. Just get used to it. Hope you have a case that's quiet enough and can provide enough airflow for your GPU to stay cool. But you can gain a lot of additional FPS. You can typically see about an extra 5 or 6 FPS in a benchmark by just simply playing with some of these sliders. So it's kind of a big deal. And this works with all graphics cards. You just don't get GPU Boost 3.0 with anything that's not a Pascal card. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hope this video helped you guys. You guys have been asking me how to overclock a Pascal. I hope this answers all those questions. If it doesn't, geez, I'm sorry. The video is way too long as it is, but it's time to go. Hit me up. Put down in the comments what your overclocks are, what card you're running, what brand, and what model, so that others can kind of get an idea of what they might see. Typically, you're going to find 1080s can hit about 2050. You're going to find that 1070s clock a little bit higher because it has less CUDA cores, hitting nearly 2200 in many cases. But with that said, guys, put your results down in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter, share them with me. I will share them with the world, and together we can raise the FPS. Cue the Sarah McLachlan music. All right, guys, see you in the next one.